Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So a couple of things I want to talk about. One is we've surpassed 2,000 subscribers, which is kind of blows my mind that many people are like just interested in what we're doing and listen to me ramble on. But I did promise that I would do a live Q&A. So that's probably going to happen on February, I'd say I'll do it on a Sunday, February the 19th. I think I'll do that. I'll update you more on that, but I'll probably come on if you've got any questions, want to know anything. I'll probably come on there, fire away, and we'll just take it as it comes. So in this video, I want to kind of talk about how I do my planning for the year. So I've already done my plan for 2023, but this is generally how I think about it. So first of all, what happens is around like October, November of 2022, so going into the winter, I'm thinking in my head, kind of formulating a rough plan of what I think I want to do, thinking about what I need. How I generally work the farm is I kind of figure out a financial number that the farm needs to generate in income, and maybe I might have some other ecological or social goals as well that I'm thinking on, because they're the three main kind of pillars of my holistic context. And so I'm roughly in the back of my mind as I'm kind of finishing up the season, formulating them in my head. And then around December, maybe even into a bit of January, I sit down and I start to put it all on paper. So I'm a very visual thinker. So I actually print out a full calendar and stick it up on the board here and start to fill it in. I will have an Excel version of this as well. It's a bit of double jobbing, but I just like the visual. And so I'll come along and I'll start to fill this in, and I will put all the detail on this. Now, this year on the farm isn't that busy, but the likes of last year, this was ridiculously busy. Any tour commitments, if I'm doing tours on the farm, they're all going on here. I'll know a lot of them in advance. Any trainings, they're going on here. Then, you know, big things like when are we getting chickens, when are new laying hens coming, when do I need to order chicks? Everything goes on the calendar. Because as the season starts to roll out, I don't really think. I just come, look at the calendar and do whatever it says needs doing. So I'll have estimated, you know, when I'll go, at the start of the year, I'll go to the grain store and I'll take stock of what grain I have. And I'll calculate out how long that feed's going to last me. And I'll know the week that I will need more grain. And so 3 weeks before that date, I will put in the diary, order feed for delivery in 3 weeks. And then, you know, 3 weeks after that, I'll set a reminder, you know, pay for feed. So everything is logged on here. And it starts to build up a financial plan as well. On my Excel sheet, I'll put in my ins and outs. So I'll be able to look at any 1 week and I'll say, okay, that week there, look at, I'm going to have to pay for a load of feed. I'm going to have to buy broiler chicks or whatever it is. So I know how much money's going out that week. And I'll also know if I have anything available for sale, you know, that week. Maybe it's a week where, you know, we're going to have beef boxes available for sale, so I can make a prediction on how much money will be coming in. So subsequently to planning on the diary what's actually happened every day, by default, kind of on a weekly basis, I'm also building a cash flow in the background, so that I know, because particularly this year's fine for me, but in previous years I was doing a lot of building of infrastructure at the start of the year, you know, the first few months. And so I was able to predict what costs were going to be. You know, if I was going to put in an order for materials, I would probably already have gotten a price at this point. So I know, look, I'm going to owe the hardware €2,500 on this week. I'm going to have to buy new pullets. So, you know, I have €3,000 bill for chickens on this week. And it means I can ensure that I don't run into any cash flow difficulties. And then also from a scheduling point of view for me, I try to make sure that there's no crossovers, and then also I'll get a lot, you know, I'll get contacted by people looking to do consultations or something. I just come in, you know, if I'm in here and I get an email, someone's really interested and wants to come to the farm for a consultation, I'll take a look at my diary and find, you know, days so I'm not overbooking myself on any particular things. This is what works for me. I'm sure you guys, you know, everybody has their own system that works. Stick with it and work it, but the idea is that everything is planned and it's not in multiple places. For me, everything's on here, so I can't make mistakes, can't forget about things, because, you know, I can't forget to order feed, because if I run out of feed, that's a big problem. There's no feed for anybody. And typically, you know, you can't just ring up the feed company and say, okay, I want feed tomorrow. You know, they need notice. A lot of the feed coming into Ireland is coming in from the UK, so the mill might be low in stock. And typically they ask me to give them like 3 to 4 weeks notice. So I got to be on top of that game, and this is how I do it. Then the big thing for me as well is like if I want to plan in my free time, you know, not only the farm commitments, but all my personal commitments. This is my diary here. So I try and build in all that. And then I kind of try and see where I can have free time or so on and so forth. And I can manipulate it about when it's on the wall. You know, if I'm deciding I'm going to run some trainings on the farm, I'm going to see when does it fit best. And then from that diary, everything is kind of extracted from that diary, because the likes of my grazing plan, that's going to be heavily affected by my diary as well, because I might want the animals in certain places at certain times. Maybe it's a training, you know, maybe the goats or the sheep are lambing, and I might want them in particular paddocks. So all that is very closely linked to the diary as well, and what's happening around the farm. And I find that a very useful tool. I will generally, now this is my big board here in the office, this is where I like to work, but generally once I've got everything written in my diary, I'll just move it over here to the right, and it's just always there for me to check on. And I also update it in progress. And then at the end of the year, what I do is I take the whole paper one and I just key it all into my Excel sheet. And what that does is it keeps a record for me, so I can look back on last year, the year before. You know, I can say last year, what time did I get weaner pigs in last year? Oh, I got them in on, you know, say the second week of April. Well, I think, you know, last year it was very wet when I got pigs. Then maybe I'll push that out a week, or so on and so forth. I'm starting to build up a database of information as well. The second thing I do then is how I generally start the year is I say, right, how much do how much money do I need to make? And so I'll come up with a number that I need to make for the next year, based on all the information. You know, you can't always predict the future, but you know, you say, okay, I want to make, you know, for me, I think next year I want to make 30,000 euro salary. So I want to take 30,000 euros out of the business. Now that's when I say a salary, I have to pay personal income tax on that after that. So I end up with, in Ireland, if I take 30,000 off the top of my head, I think maybe I would take home like maybe a bit under 25,000 would be actually cash into my bank account, something around that. And I still got running costs for the business that I got to account for. So I keep a very detailed, I won't turn on my screen here because the light will mess up. I thought I could have my screen on, the light will mess up the camera. But I've got all my accounts, my expenditures we're going into our like 4th year, I think, in the farm, 5th year, whatever. So I detail all my expenses. I have to, because I lodge my tax returns every year. So all my expenses are categorized in an Excel sheet. So I know exactly what I spend my money on. You know, I know how much my motor expenses are for the year, how much my, you know, maintenance is for the year, how much my miscellaneous costs are for the year. I have a really good track of that. And so for me to run my farm, it really costs about 8,000 euros generally. And, you know, that's my phone bill, everything that's not directly linked to an enterprise. So my indirect costs are generally for me about 8,000. And that means nothing really, because in comparison to another business, another farm, because what I class as indirect and what someone else might class as indirect could be, you know, totally different. So me saying it cost me 8,000 to run my indirect costs, it's not really relevant to anything either, because unless I went into someone else's business and I classed them all the same way I classed them, then we could compare them. So, you know, it's not really something you can compare a number to per se either. But for me, I need to have 8,000 euros to run my business outside of my direct costs, and I call that 10,000 because I allow like 2,000 of miscellaneous stuff. There'll always be something happening that you won't predict or whatever, so I like to put 10,000 euros aside to run my business. So I need to make 30,000 euros for me. I need another 10,000 euros for miscellaneous costs, and then my direct costs are generally somewhere in the region of 40 to 50%. So realistically, I need about at least, I'm thinking 70,000 euros of turnover. I'll definitely net my 30,000. In fact, if I turned over 70,000, I probably could have even closer. I've ran the numbers. I ran the numbers in Excel. I know if I turned over like 75,000, I would have 40,000 euros left that I could take. And what I would like to do is leave 10,000 euros in the business and take 30,000 euros out. So basically, I've got growing my cash within the business by 10,000. So my plan is to turn over about 75,000 euros in 2023. And then to do that, then I say, right, what enterprises will I run? And this is just a real cut and paste job then. what I do, I decide, you know, what do I want to do this year? And so say, okay, maybe I'll do a little bit of laying hens, maybe I'll do a little bit of turkeys, maybe I'll do a few tours, maybe I'll do a bit of this. And it's all really based on what, you know, the time input I want to put in, how I want my day to look. And I will just chop and change things until I get to the €75,000 turnover. You know, eggs, you could turn over, you know, 200 laying hens, which is not a lot of laying hens, you know, they'll turn over 20 grand easy, you know, so that'd be over a quarter of the way there. Then I might say, you know, 100 turkeys, turn over probably the guts of 10 grand. And I just chop and change and put it together till I get to the number I want to get. And then I stop, you know, I could keep going and going, but that's all my time. And I don't want to be, you know, I don't value money as much as I did when I was younger. Now I value time. As I'm sure a lot of people can start to relate to that. So I just figure out, and again, I can do that because I know my cost of productions of everything. I know my sales price. You know, I'm setting the price. The only input cost I don't know is, say for me, if I was doing poultry, is grain. So I always estimate the highest end possible. And therefore then, if the price of grain doesn't go up to what I expected, well, that's all more profit compared to what I thought I would have. And so I work out all that. I just spend, you know, a couple of days. I don't I've got all the sheets now and everything. I can do it in like a couple of hours. But when I started doing this, I would spend a day doing it maybe, and then I would leave it for a few days and let it kind of, you know, mull over it. And then I'd come back to it and I would change it again. And because really what you're trying to avoid is doing lots of planning and expecting, you know, oh, well, I'll make this much in this enterprise and I'll make this much in this enterprise and it'll all be fine. Then you go at it, and then at the end of the year, you know, when you were supposed to make €40,000 in salary, there's supposed to be €40,000 sitting there, boom, it's not there, there's only 10,000. Where the hell did all your money go? And you go back and you look at it, and well, actually, I overestimated how much I'd sell. I underestimated how much stuff was going to cost, and I try to do the opposite. Like I explained in the video about the enterprise of planning. I think it was a goat enterprise I planned on a spreadsheet. I try to overestimate all the costs, underestimate all the sales value, so then you're left with a happy surprise as opposed to a very sad surprise come the end of the year. But I'm also because when I'm doing my planning, I'm planning my cash flow as well. So I'm planning money coming in. So I know, you know, if I'm going to do €20,000 worth of eggs in the year, say, then I should be taking in €385 worth of eggs a week. So every week I do my sales at the end of every week. I tot it up, you know, how much did I get for eggs? And I know if that's below 385, I have a problem. So it's a KPI, a key performance indicator. And so I keep an eye on that. And not so much, I know roughly during the week, when I'm doing it up the week, but at the end of the month, I'll take a good look at this. I'll sit down for a couple of hours and look at, you know, what was my sales for the month? I know what they should be, and I'll compare them, what they should be to what they are. And then I can say, well, okay, there's a problem here. Egg sales are back €200 this month on where they should be. Now, if I do nothing, and that happens every month, well, you know, that's €2,400 gone. So I get in there and I address it. Okay, egg sales are down a bit. I start to look into it, maybe promote it a bit more, do whatever I have to do, but I'm constantly analysing it. So at this time of year, I make up my plan. I set out, you know, I'll make notes for myself. Eggs should be selling this much a month. You know, turkey sales at Christmas should be this much thousand. So because I won't think of it until next Christmas, which is a year away. But I know I'll have it recorded there. I'll just open my spreadsheet and say, okay, I should have €10,000 worth of sales for turkeys. So I look at all my, you know, how many turkeys did I grow? What's the sales value in all them? And if I'm not, you know, I've only sold 75% of my turkeys, and I need to get out there, sell the rest of them, and get it to where I've planned to be, and then I'm not getting this nasty surprise. The other thing is to factor in, I didn't factor it in there, but is to pay tax, because whether it be, I did talk about income tax, but I run my farm as a limited company, so I would have to pay tax on any profit I make. Now technically, I wouldn't, if I've factored in €10,000 of profit there, was what I've planned to make this year, because my salary is considered a cost on the business and all the other direct costs would be costs. So if I just took out my salary, then technically the company didn't make any profit and I wouldn't owe any tax. But my plan is to make in the region of €10,000 of profit, and then I'd have to pay corporation tax on that, which is in the region of 12.5%. So the company would actually end up at the end of the year being like €8,750 in profit after it's paid tax and so on and so forth. So that's the general plan. I should stick to it. My plan is really focusing. I'm going to have a layer enterprise. I'm going to do turkeys. I'm going to focus on grass-based enterprises. I'm going to do some cows, some sheep, and that's mainly it. I'm cutting back on the agri-tourism in the farm. I am thinking of maybe developing a more educational tour aspect of the farm, but I'm not sure where I'm at and how much time input. I'm just taking it a lot easier this year in the farm as a goal. And I really want to focus on some of the things that I've neglected on the farm, like putting in a nice garden and not overdoing it this year, just taking over nicely, not going crazy. And then see what direction I want to move things in going forward from that. I think the best advice I can give is like, sit down, so I suppose I quite enjoy this aspect. In fact, I love planning. I've worked a lot in various other businesses where I was doing a lot of the planning. I love making a plan and then pushing hard to keep to that plan and then seeing it come together. I suppose I just get enjoyment out of that and makes me happy and gives me satisfaction. And I know a lot of people just absolutely hate this part of it. But I think you're better to sit down and have some form of plan, because it's very difficult to judge yourself against something if you don't have a plan to start with. Now, the plan could be as far out as a lighthouse. It doesn't really matter as a starting point, I think, and you can constantly improve it from there. That would be my advice. So sit down and plan out something. And yes, life changes, and particularly farming, there's a lot of variables. But to be honest, I find the type of farming I do, where you're very limited inputs, and you're direct selling, there's very little variables. The weather is the main variable, and so that might affect your output slightly. But in general, I have found with this basic model that I do of farming, it's very predictable, financially, ecologically, socially. It is very predictable. There's not too many variables in it, and that is mainly because, if you notice in my farm, I don't try and overwinter a lot of animals, so they are more seasonal, which is a lot easier to predict, and I reap the benefits of that. That I've actively went after that, and it makes planning a lot easier. It means that I end up where I plan to be most of the time. Don't be silly. I've made plans. This is what I'm going to do, and this is where I'm going to be, and being as far out as a lighthouse, but I've learned from them. I suppose that's the key. You definitely don't always get it right. With regards to goats, I want to move away a bit from the goats this year, because I don't want to be tied to the farm every day milking goats. And I think I'm going to cut down. I'm going to get rid of a lot of the goats. I'll keep a few because I like having them eating it. But a lot of the goats I have are not suited to, I've spent the last 3 years learning a lot about goats, and I kind of understand the type of goat that would really work well in my system. It's like a medium frame goat, maybe a cross goat, even a Toggleworth crossed, a really hardy goat, medium frame, not too big. So I've learned a lot. I know I've learned what type of goat would be good for me. So maybe down the line in another year or two, I might come back to that, and because I was really seriously thinking about getting big into milking goats, and I've not given up on it whatsoever, but I have thought about, right now I want a little bit of freedom, I suppose, and going down the goat route would definitely not be heading in that direction. So maybe in another 2 years or so, I might have moved back into, where I'm happy to be around a lot more. But I suppose I got to give myself a little bit of freedom. I've been tied to the farm for the last 4 odd years, and I think it'll be good for me, and it'll be good for the farm as a whole. So that's where the kind of goats are at. And yeah, no, I'm really excited and looking forward to this year. And I've got the plan there, and now it's just to go at it. So that's generally how I plan the farm. I don't think there's any right or wrong way about this. Everybody's going to have their own way and their own nuanced way of doing stuff. And look, at the key message is whatever works for you is what works, right? I think. So best luck to all you guys who are planning your 2023 season. I really hope it's a nice, good year weather-wise. So all this stuff goes on in your head as you're tottering along. And it's one of the beauties of farming. You know, you got to put on so many hats along the way. But that's it for this video. I'm kind of ranting on now. As I said, probably Sunday the 19th of February I'll do a YouTube live. If you've got any questions, or you're thinking on any stuff, or you're thinking of starting something and you got any questions, probably jot them down and drop in whenever we get it going. I'll publicize it, and I'll see you then.